Aarohi Malhotra was just 23, a young maid from India chasing a dream in the heart of New York, while Evan Whitmore, a wealthy businessman, seemed like the answer to everything she had ever hoped for. But behind the luxury, behind the smiles and promises, a dark secret was brewing, one that would turn hope into horror. Every decision Aarohi made, every moment she trusted Evan, brought her closer to a danger she couldn't see. What started as a secret affair spiraled into betrayal, lies, and a chilling plan that would shock the city. Detective Rosa Martinez and investigator Liam Brooks began piecing the puzzle, revealing a story no one was prepared for. Could love ever be deadly? And who would survive when power and obsession collide? Stay with us as we uncover the twists, the secrets, and the shocking truth of Aarohi Malhotra's final days. You won't believe how it all ends. Aarohi Malhotra stepped out of JFK Airport with tired eyes and a quiet hope she refused to let die. She was only 23, carrying 2 worn suitcases and a dream she had protected for years. New York did not welcome her with warmth. It welcomed her with noise, speed, and a feeling that everyone already knew where they were going, except her. She had come from India on a temporary arrangement, brought in through a distant contact who promised work, safety, and a chance to earn enough money to support her family back home. For Aarohi, that promise was everything. The Whitmore residence was nothing like the home she had known. The building rose into the sky, like a fortress of glass and money. Inside, the floors shined, the walls were silent, and every object looked expensive enough to break her confidence. She was hired as a live-in maid, responsible for cleaning, organizing, and staying invisible. That was the unspoken rule. Invisible people were never questioned, never remembered. Evan Whitmore noticed her on the very first day. He was a man used to control, over deals, over people, over outcomes. He watched how Aarohi moved carefully, how she spoke little, how she never complained. Unlike the others, she did not ask questions. That silence caught his attention. He began giving small instructions directly to her, bypassing supervisors. It felt harmless at first. Aarohi worked longer hours than expected. She woke before sunrise and slept after midnight. The city outside felt unreachable, like a dream she could see through the window but never touch. Her phone calls home were short. She told her family everything was fine. She did not tell them how lonely she felt. Evan slowly changed the rules. He asked about her life. He asked why she came to America. He told her stories about success, about people who started with nothing. He made her believe he understood her struggle. To Aarohi, his attention felt like protection. In a foreign country where one mistake could destroy her future, having someone powerful notice her felt safe. Weeks passed. The distance between employer and employee blurred. Evan began offering help, money, advice, promises about legal papers. Aarohi believed him because she needed to believe someone. Every word he spoke sounded like a door opening. What Aarohi did not see was how carefully everything was being controlled. Evan decided when she was allowed to feel special, and when she was ignored. He made her dependent without her realizing it. She mistook manipulation for care. Inside the apartment, the air felt heavier each day. Evan's wife, Cassandra, was often away, and when she was home, the silence grew sharp. Aarohi sensed something was wrong, but pushed the feeling aside. She had learned that survival sometimes meant not asking questions. Late nights became common. Evan lingered longer. His presence felt unavoidable. Aarohi told herself this was temporary, that everything would make sense soon. She started imagining a future where she was no longer invisible. But beneath the polished floors and locked doors, something darker was forming. Evan's interest was not love. It was control mixed with fear of exposure. Aarohi did not know that the more she trusted him, the more dangerous she became to him. One small decision changed everything. Aarohi began keeping reminders, simple things she thought would protect her. She believed proof meant security. She believed trust would be rewarded. She was wrong. Because in a city like New York, power does not panic. It plans. And while Aarohi dreamed of a better life, someone else was already deciding how her story would end. The next part of her life would not be about hope. It would be about silence, secrets, and a mistake she would never get the chance to fix. The secret between Aarohi Malhotra and Evan Whitmore did not begin loudly. It grew quietly, like something dangerous that survives best in silence. What started as attention slowly became expectation. Evan decided when Aarohi could see him, and when she was supposed to disappear back into the background. To him, the arrangement felt controlled. To Aarohi, it felt personal. She began living in two realities. In one, she was still the invisible maid, moving carefully through the apartment, avoiding Cassandra's eyes, keeping her head down. In the other, she believed she was special, chosen, protected by a man who promised a future beyond cleaning floors. The difference between those two lives exhausted her. Evan fed her hope in small portions. He hinted at helping her with documents, with a better job, with independence. He never gave clear answers, only reassurance. Aarohi accepted this because clarity felt risky. Questioning him felt like losing everything. Her isolation deepened. She stopped contacting people she barely knew in the city. She avoided forming friendships. Evan became the center of her emotional world without ever fully stepping into it. She did not realize how alone that made her. Cassandra Whitmore sensed a shift long before she understood it. The house no longer felt like hers. The silence felt intentional. Aarohi moved through rooms with tension written on her face. Evan became defensive, distant, unpredictable. Small details no longer matched. Something invisible was breaking the balance. Aarohi began noticing changes in Evan as well. His tone sharpened. His patience thinned. He started reminding her of her position, her lack of status, her dependence. The warmth she once felt slowly cooled into uncertainty. She wondered if she had misunderstood everything. Fear crept in when she realized how much she had risked. Her job, her safety, her future. She began thinking about what would happen if Evan suddenly turned away from her. That fear pushed her toward a decision she believed would protect her. She started saving proof. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she wanted security. She believed evidence meant leverage. She believed it would force Evan to keep his promises. To Aarohi, this felt like survival, not betrayal. But Evan noticed the shift. He sensed the loss of control. His kindness disappeared, replaced by calculation. What he once viewed as a secret advantage now felt like a threat. The power dynamic flipped silently. Aarohi thought she was finally protecting herself. Evan began seeing her as a risk that needed managing. Tension filled the apartment like an unspoken warning. Cassandra's suspicion grew. Evan became increasingly anxious. Aarohi felt trapped between hope and fear, unsure which would destroy her first. She made one final mistake. Aarohi hinted that she needed certainty, stability, a future she could depend on. She believed honesty would lead to safety. Instead, it triggered something dark. Evan stopped seeing her as a person. He saw consequences. Scandal. Exposure. Everything he had built felt fragile in her presence. To him, Aarohi was no longer a secret. She was a problem. From that moment, Evan's behavior changed completely. He distanced himself emotionally while tightening control behind the scenes. Aarohi felt the coldness but didn't understand it. She believed space meant he was thinking. She believed silence meant patience. She didn't know that plans were already forming. The city outside continued moving, unaware that something irreversible was approaching. Aarohi walked through New York, believing her life was about to change for the better. Evan watched her, believing he needed to protect himself at any cost. Two people stood on opposite sides of the same secret. One hoped it would save her. The other feared it would destroy him. And when fear meets power, the ending is never gentle. By the time Aarohi sensed real danger, it was already too late to turn back. The night Aarohi Malhotra disappeared, the city behaved like it always did. Traffic moved. Lights reflected on wet streets. People hurried past one another without noticing who was missing. Aarohi left the apartment carrying a small bag, following a routine she had repeated many times before. She did not tell anyone she was afraid. She did not know she needed to. Hours passed. Her phone went unanswered. By morning, her room inside the Whitmore apartment remained untouched. Evan Whitmore told the household staff that Aarohi had quit suddenly and returned to her country. He said it with calm certainty, as if rehearsed. No one questioned him. People like Evan were rarely questioned. For 2 days, Aarohi simply vanished. Then a body was discovered near the Hudson River. The report described a young woman, no identification, no witnesses, no immediate signs of struggle that demanded attention. The conclusion was quick and convenient. Another tragic accident in a city full of them. The case was closed before anyone had time to care. But silence as a way of attracting the wrong kind of attention. A volunteer from a local community group noticed a missing person post online. The photo was grainy, but the face looked familiar. The clothes matched. The timing was too close to ignore. A name finally reached the police system that had previously labeled her as unknown. Detective Rosa Martinez reopened the file quietly. She had learned to distrust easy answers. The river location didn't match the injuries. The timeline didn't fit the weather. Small details felt wrong in a way that paperwork could not explain. Aarohi's background raised more questions. She was undocumented, isolated, employed inside a high-security building owned by powerful people. Yet no formal resignation, no exit record, no trace of travel. The Whitmore residence became part of the investigation without public attention. Evan repeated his story. Calm, polished, cooperative. But something in his consistency felt unnatural. People who told the truth usually stumbled over details. Evan never did. Security footage from the building raised suspicion. A short window of time was missing from the recordings. Maintenance issues were blamed. Detective Martinez had heard that excuse too many times. The narrative of an accident began to crack. Meanwhile, the media remained silent. Aarohi did not fit the profile of a story worth headlines. No family demanding answers. No social status to amplify her absence. Her life existed only in files and fragments. But behind the scenes, the investigation slowly gained weight. A private investigator named Liam Brooks was brought in to trace connections that official channels could not easily reach. Financial patterns revealed unusual activity. Short-term payments. Storage rentals. Services paid for with corporate accounts. Aarohi's belongings were eventually located in a storage unit registered under a company tied to Evan Whitmore. Inside were items she had never been able to take with her. Clothes. Personal notes. Proof that she had not left by choice. The idea of an accident collapsed completely. What remained was a carefully managed disappearance disguised as randomness. Someone had counted on Aarohi being forgettable. Someone had counted on her silence lasting forever. Evan's world, once perfectly controlled, began shrinking. The pressure was quiet but relentless. Investigators asked the same questions repeatedly, each time in a different way. His answers stayed smooth, but his body language shifted. Control was slipping. Cassandra Whitmore sensed the change before the truth reached her. The home no longer felt stable. Whispers followed her in public spaces. Friends avoided eye contact. Something was coming, and she didn't know what. Aarohi's name finally entered official records as a victim, not an accident. The case gained structure. Motive began to form. Opportunity was clear. But the most disturbing realization came last. This had not been impulsive. It had been planned. Someone had decided that removing a person was easier than facing exposure. Someone had believed money and influence would erase a life. As the investigation moved closer to the truth, one fact became undeniable. Aarohi Malhotra did not fall into the river. She was pushed out of a future she never got the chance to live. And the next chapter would reveal how far power was willing to go to protect itself when the illusion finally broke. Detective Rosa Martinez knew this case was different from the start. Aarohi Malhotra's death was not a random tragedy. Every detail, every missing file, every unexplained action pointed to someone who wanted to erase more than just a life. They wanted to erase evidence. The moment she reviewed the storage unit where Aarohi's belongings were found, a pattern emerged. There was intention behind every move, calculation behind every disappearance. Nothing about this was accidental. Inside the storage unit were personal items that painted a picture of a young woman whose trust had been weaponized. Clothes, photographs, and handwritten notes revealed her connection to Evan Whitmore, each page a reminder that she had dared to hope. Hope that, in another life, would have saved her. But here, it became evidence of a crime, proof that she had been somewhere she should not have been, proof that someone had felt threatened. Martinez brought in private investigator Liam Brooks to dig deeper. Liam had a reputation for uncovering hidden trails in cases others dismissed as hopeless. He went through Evan Whitmore's finances, searching for irregularities. Transactions appeared normal at first glance. Corporate accounts, service payments, transfers labeled ambiguously. But then he noticed the small patterns, unexplained withdrawals, accounts registered under different names, payments for services that had no clear purpose. Each transaction seemed designed to leave no trail, yet somehow they were connected. Security footage was another piece of the puzzle. Certain hours had been wiped or corrupted, files deleted in a way that suggested knowledge of the system. Liam and Martinez worked together, restoring fragments where they could. Tiny images appeared. Aarohi entering the building, leaving with a small bag, Evan watching from the hallway. Nothing directly incriminating, but the pattern of control and surveillance was unmistakable. Evan had known where she was, what she was doing, and had ensured no one else would. The narrative that Aarohi had left voluntarily or accidentally was crumbling. Each day brought new evidence. Each small discovery revealed the reality. This had been orchestrated with precision. The river, once a symbol of accidental tragedy, became a calculated tool. Her disappearance from the penthouse, the erased footage, the altered logs, all signs of deliberate planning. Someone with power, influence, and resources had acted to cover a secret, and the web they had spun was unraveling. Liam discovered messages and photographs in Aarohi's belongings that linked directly to Evan. Handwritten notes and phone records proved the depth of their relationship, the intensity of her trust, and the dangerous dependency she had developed. It became clear that this was more than a moment of passion gone wrong. This was the story of a calculated silencing, of someone unwilling to accept risk when it threatened an empire. Martinez began interviewing staff and associates. Many had noticed small inconsistencies over time, unusual instructions from Evan, sudden changes in Aarohi's routines. Individually, the details seemed minor. Together, they painted a picture of coercion and control. Evan's personality, once described publicly as composed and generous, now appeared manipulative and strategic. Every interaction with Aarohi had been measured, every gesture designed to maintain dominance while masking danger. Cassandra Whitmore's perspective added another layer. She had seen the subtle shifts within her home, the invisible tension between her husband and Aarohi. Yet without proof, she had dismissed her instincts, as many do when reality hides in plain sight. Now, the truth began to pierce through the carefully maintained facade. The house that once symbolized power and luxury had become a stage for something sinister. What shocked investigators most was how thoroughly Evan had tried to erase every trace of Aarohi's existence. Each step was calculated to look innocent. Each lie was precise, aimed at ensuring that no one would question the narrative of a young woman disappearing by choice. But meticulous planning has a limit. Even the most careful construction of lies cannot withstand scrutiny when persistence meets truth. By the time Liam Brooks and Detective Martinez had gathered enough evidence, the picture was clear. Aarohi Malhotra had not left voluntarily. She had been silenced by someone who had considered power more important than life. Every document, every photo, every corrupted video was a piece of proof that exposed the lengths a person would go to protect themselves, no matter the cost to another. And while the legal system had not yet acted, one fact was undeniable. The story of manipulation, betrayal, and murder was no longer hidden behind luxury doors. It was about to be revealed, and the world would see just how far someone would go to protect their empire from the truth. Aarohi's fight for justice had begun, even if she could no longer fight herself. Evan Whitmore's arrest was quiet at first, the kind that stunned the city without fanfare. Manhattan's skyline glittered with the same brilliance it had the day Aarohi Malhotra disappeared, but now it cast shadows that no one could ignore. Headlines began appearing slowly, building momentum. Millionaire arrested in Maid's death, power, betrayal, and murder in Manhattan. For weeks, the city had ignored Aarohi, but the story could no longer be silenced. Every detail of her life, every secret kept from the public, became evidence of the man she had trusted and the empire he had tried to protect. Cassandra Whitmore filed for divorce almost immediately. Friends, investors, and business associates began to distance themselves. Evan's carefully constructed world started to collapse, block by block, like a building designed to impress but hollow at its core. The penthouse that had once seemed untouchable became a prison of scrutiny. Every corner, every deleted file, every manipulated record was now part of an investigation that could not be ignored. Evan, the man who had controlled so much, was suddenly powerless. Inside the courtroom, details emerged that shocked even seasoned journalists. Aarohi's notes, photographs, and recordings were presented as evidence. Each piece told the story of a young woman who had dared to trust in love, a trust that was exploited and ultimately destroyed. Her hopes, dreams, and life had been weaponized against her. The story captivated the public because it was more than just a crime, it was a warning. A girl, so far from home, so isolated, had become the victim of someone who viewed power as a shield above morality. The trial revealed the extent of Evan's planning. Witnesses spoke of subtle threats, manipulations, and control tactics that had left Aarohi dependent and trapped. Financial investigators detailed transfers and hidden accounts meant to silence her. Security footage and expert testimony showed the precise timing of actions designed to make her disappearance seem accidental. The courtroom was a stage where every lie Evan had told unraveled in front of the world. Public attention intensified. People across the country followed the case, captivated by the tragic contrast between wealth and vulnerability, control and innocence. Aarohi, once invisible, became the symbol of countless others whose lives could be endangered by the same imbalance of power. Her story resonated not because it was unique, but because it was universal, an illustration of how easily trust can be exploited when someone wields influence without accountability. Evan remained composed outwardly, but his carefully rehearsed calm was cracking. Each revelation added pressure, each witness chipped away at his defenses. The man who had once dictated the rhythm of a household, the narrative of a life, was now forced to answer questions he could not avoid. The system he had manipulated so long finally caught up with him, and there was no escape. Cassandra Whitmore's testimony added layers of shock and betrayal. She described the subtle shift she had noticed in her home, the tension she had felt without understanding why. Her presence in court underscored the reality that the family facade had hidden a lethal truth. She became a witness to manipulation, a witness to how easily love and loyalty can be twisted into danger. Despite the public exposure and the growing evidence, the tragedy of Aarohi Malhotra could not be undone. Justice could bring conviction, but it could not restore the life she had lost. Her family in India mourned, reading every headline, every detail, trying to reconcile the news with the daughter and sister they had loved. The world now knew her name, but she would never live to see the impact of her story. Evan Whitmore's sentencing sent a clear message. Power does not exempt anyone from consequences. But even as the gavel fell, the city remained indifferent to those who suffer quietly, those whose trust is exploited by people who hold influence over their lives. Aarohi's case became a stark reminder. The cost of misplaced trust can be life itself. Her life, though cut short, became a symbol. A warning to those who assume kindness can never conceal danger, to those who believe wealth guarantees safety, and to anyone who underestimates how far some will go to protect themselves. In a city of millions, her story echoed, proving that some crimes cannot remain hidden behind luxury doors. Even after death, Aarohi Malhotra had found a way to make the world notice, and the impact of her story would be remembered far longer than the man who tried to erase her. The empire that had seemed untouchable crumbled, but the truth remained unstoppable. And in that truth, Aarohi's legacy finally lived on.